It's a new year and Wocip is leveling up. The In the Know podcast has expanded to include video. Join me as I kick off the year talking to two friends of Wocip, mental health expert and author Dr. Charryse Johnson and leadership extraordinaire Cecilia Carter of The Strategy Chick. In this episode, Dr. Johnson and Cecilia share their life wisdom and professional insights.
But if you're not intentional with how you're treating yourself, how you're talking to yourself, the places that you place yourself, then that becomes overwhelming, and I think a lot of times, specifically as women of color, we are very intentional about how we take care of others instead of being very intentional about how we take care of ourselves.
Everything starts with self. And I think that's the key message I want everyone to take away. To be self-empowered, you first have to take a look at how you relate with yourself. And then you can use that as a foundation for moving forward and springboarding into the year. And I think that's what this whole Thrive series will do for you.
Buckle up and get ready to be informed and inspired. It's time for you to be in the know. I would like to welcome you ladies to the first podcast of 2025, In the Know. You are our esteemed faculty. I feel like I already know you, but I'm hoping that our audience will get to know you more during this podcast. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us your connection to Wocip?
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte. I'm Cecilia Carter, for those of you who haven't had a chance to interact and work with me. And I'm an executive coach, technically speaking, but what I really define my role is as a self-empowerment artist. And I entered this space of working with Wocip with Charlotte. She was my client, and when she started out working, I think we're at BMS. It's been several years now. And I looked at the purpose and mission and vision that she had for Wocip and got engaged right away. I remember coming to one of the first conferences that she had and out in New Jersey. It was amazing, the energy, the women, the connection. And I found a sense of community and a dedication that I wanted to have in my practice. So I connected with that right away, and I've been working with Wocip over the years since then, and I just look forward to it continuing to grow.
And since you've taken me all the way back, it's been almost a decade, I think, and you've been instrumental in my life, in my career journey, and also in what we're doing with Wocip, and we're going to get into that. I just want to say thank you.
Oh, Charlotte, it is not work, it's love.
Thank you. Dr. Reese, can you introduce yourself and your connection to Wocip?
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Charryse Reese Johnson. I'm a clinical mental health therapist, and my introduction to Wocip was meeting you and Lucretia. It's been almost 2 years. I feel like I've known you both forever and been a part of the organization forever. I assist with mental fitness and well-being for those who are involved in Be Well, also Project Her at conferences, and I'm declaring that I will now just be with Wocip forever. You can't get rid of me. But I love what I do as a clinical mental health therapist, and then I spend about half my time working with corporations and organizations around what does it truly mean to be well, and not just on paper, but in life.
Well, thank you for being here, and you were the missing piece, I will say. We built Wocip knowing that it was important to infuse health and wellness into everything that we do. And for so long, we were looking for someone like you and couldn't find that person. But within 5 minutes of seeing you, I knew you were the one. And I will never forget trying to figure out the angle to get to you, because in my mind, you were this big personality. And I will say that you have been a true road dog. Whenever we call you, you are like, I am there halfway across the world as long as it fits within the schedule. And I thank you. Personally, I've learned so much from you about my relationship with food and also what's important to do on a daily basis, and to do the work. And we're going to dive into some of that during this conversation as well. So we brought both of you together because we do think it's important. We know that our audience, they're trying to achieve in their lives, both at home but also at work. They're trying to climb the career ladder, or they're trying to survive, and what we would like to say is thrive. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, well, what does it mean to thrive? But we knew that we couldn't leave out the mental component of it. That's really important. Mindset is so important to everything that we do. So that's why we have brought both of you together, as I call our esteemed faculty for Wocip. And I wanted to, as we start this year in particular, this is a unique year. What are one or two key things that you think is going to be critical for women of color professionals this year in particular to make sure that they consider as they begin the year?
Self. They need to consider themselves. And if you aren't right and whole with yourself, you can't work in an organization. You won't be able to lead. And this is why having Dr. Charryse be a part of this, I'm going to call us the triumvirate right now. When you joined last year, I knew that we nailed it, because I was a psych major in undergrad thinking I was going to be a therapist. I couldn't get through the statistics of it. But you bring that piece that makes it holistic. So everything starts with self. And I think that's the key message I want everyone to take away. To be self-empowered, you first have to take a look at how you relate with yourself. And then you can use that as a foundation for moving forward and springboarding into the year. And I think that's what this whole Thrive series will do for you.
I love that you chose self, because what I was thinking is intentionality. So you can know yourself, you can be the most self-aware, person in the world, but if you're not intentional with how you're treating yourself, how you're talking to yourself, the places that you place yourself, then that becomes overwhelming, and I think a lot of times, specifically as women of color, we are very intentional about how we take care of others instead of being very intentional about how we take care of ourselves. So that whole process of fill your cup first all the time, but specifically this year, and then really look at, as I move forward and I make decisions for my life, is that going to be something that will add and continue to pour into my cup, or will it deplete me?
And so we're coming off of the holiday season. Maybe give me an example of how you've taken care of yourself during the holidays.
I gave myself the gift of doing nothing. I was still. And it was hard for me to learn how to be still. And be still really means calming my mind, being in sync with my body and listening to it. So I did a lot of work last year, a lot of travel. Intentionality, all the things that I planned to do, I got them done. And finally, as the holidays approached, instead of giving into the pressure of, I've got to decorate, I've got to cook, I have to do all these, again, what we talk about carrying the water. Remember, we focused on that at one of the annual conferences. I just said, no, I'm putting me first. So I ordered food from different places and gave responsibility to the rest of the family to set the table or not set the table. We could eat together. I set time to make new traditions. I also had the luxury of turning 66. And let me tell you, you get some perspective.
Yay! Wow, you look good to be
you.
66.
That comes from being at peace with myself. It is well within myself. So I'm spiritually aligned, I am emotionally aligned, and I'm physically aligned. I work out every day. I do not miss a day, even if it's meditation. That's working out too. So I gave myself the gift of being still and allowing my mind to relax. being ready to start this new year and coming here, being the first bit of work that I re-entered the working space with you.
Well, that's good. Charryse, what about you?
So I'm a huge proponent of solo trips and believe that you should always take periodic trips by yourself. So this year, I moved one of the solo trips that I did to the end of the year. So I spent the last 4 days of the year and the first day of the year completely by myself, rented a house in the mountains, and it was phenomenal. I got to spend 5 days just really flowing and deciding, do I need rest? Do I need to reflect? Do I want to connect with other people? Do I not? And it has made a tremendous difference coming into this new year. I feel restored, refueled, refreshed, and I'll do it again.
I really like that idea. Something for me to try.
That is really nice.
Oh, you've never done a solo?
I've never done a solo trip. I'm like, oh, where, how,
Yes,
what did you
least
explain
once
to
a
others?
quarter.
How did you get permission?
You know, I
All
think
the
it's you have
things?
to give yourself permission. You know, I'll be honest. My husband was like, "Wait, what?" And you know, he's known that I've done these before, but I don't usually do them at the end of the year. You typically think, "Oh, I want to clean my whole house for the end of the year, and I want to make that traditional New Year's meal." And I was like, "Nope, don't want to do any of that. It's been a busy year, and what I really need is time to restore alone." So I think it's not about asking permission. You first have to give yourself permission and go, this is something that I know that I need. And the more that you really hold that line, then people respect it. And then by the time I came back, he was like, well, you look great. You know, how did it go? I was like, it was the best thing I ever did. You know, get used to it.
Love that.
Perfect. I'm going to borrow that page.
Yes.
You're like, I want more of that
Yes.
as I'm still by myself.
Yes.
And there must have been some work that you had to do to even be still. And we often talk about the decades of experience that you've had in corporate America. Is that something that you learned along the way, or did you always have that?
Great question. I am always learning. I am always evolving. I think that's another key message is never stop learning. So, no, I didn't, like, as I like to say, like Beyonce says, I did not pop out like this.
You didn't wake up like
I didn't wake
this?
up like this at all. But I've always had a sense of resiliency. I learned early on the importance of being resilient, probably from observing it in my parents. But I took the time to understand what was happening to me and making a meaning of it. So, you know, in my early years, my parents were civil rights pioneers. And they moved us from the sanctity of the inner city of Cleveland, where I had black friends that looked like me, into a lily white, all white neighborhood. And I had to start over and find out who I was in the 3rd grade.
And where was that? Where did
In
you move
Ohio.
to?
I grew up
Where?
in Cleveland.
Where
Ohio.
in Cleveland?
I grew up in Cleveland Heights, but this particular time move was into Euclid, and this was during a time when they were just integrating those eastern suburbs. So I'm in the 3rd grade, and I'm trying to find myself, and I didn't want to stand out any more than I already did because of my color and my hair, so my voice became small. And believe it or not, as much as you know as I talk now, I didn't talk as much. I had to evolve. And building my confidence came from education. I knew I was smart, and that was a place that I could compete. So once I found the ground that I could compete in, I went full steam ahead, and I didn't let other things bother me. That once you get a win under your belt, you can continue to build on that and convince yourself that you can do hard things. That's how I evolved.
I can do hard
I
things.
can do hard things.
Well, my end of the year was also very quiet. Still, I was exhausted because I was Premier 1K. And so that meant that I did a whole lot of travel. And I was like, okay, I need to just be still. And as I came into 2025, a part of me being still was really thinking like, okay, what is that next year going to be for me? And I usually start the year with a one word. And I was having a hard time really picking what is that one word going to be? Well, last year my one word was explode. I'll share what my one word is after I hear from you all a little bit about How do you kick off the new year? What is maybe a routine that you have as you get into the new year?
Yeah. One of the biggest ways that I kick off the new year is thinking about what I want to experience this year so that I don't get caught up in just planning things and doing things. Like, do I want to experience more rest, more joy, more fun, more laughter? So spending time in reflection and starting it with, here's what I feel like I need in order to move through the year, and then letting the year build around it and leaving room for space. So I'm a big proponent of, even if you make plans, keep space there so that if you need to pivot, if you need to move, if you need to evolve in some way, that you can. And I usually have a few words that I mull around. Last year, my word was audacity, which I felt like, it was one of those things I was like, how's this going to come alive? And then it did. And this year's word is release.
But I'm interested. How did audacity come alive?
Yeah, audacity came alive because regardless of what people may know, I am not an extrovert. When I'm very passionate about something, I am all in. But there are still ways that I hold myself back because it's outside of my comfort zone. And so as I went through the year, I was either put in situations or I was around other people that I looked at and went, I need that. I need more of that, because that kind of audacity is what has helped move the needle in their life and help them thrive in ways that I know I'm capable of, but I'm standing in my way. So I had to do some work. And as a result of that work, I gained a lot of confidence in areas of speaking and communicating and putting myself out there. And really that audacity led to the why not me kind of framework.
So,
It's amazing.
out of your head.
Yeah.
Tell me, what was one audacious thing that you did?
Oh, one audacious thing. You're really putting me on the spot.
I'm just asking.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Inquiring minds want to know. I would say one of the top things that I did was to create a plan that I want to put in place this year for supporting, honestly, executive women who need mental health support through a concierge basis. And that's something that I've thought about doing for a very long time, where your schedule's busy, you know that, hey, I could have this one appointment, it needs to change, and making myself available for whenever you need me within 48 hours, we will figure that out. So I've been sitting on that for 5 years and really went and said, this is the year you're putting it together and putting it out there. You know the need is there. Why are you stopping yourself? And so that was probably the boldest thing that I did there.
Thanks for sharing. That was audacious.
That's awesome.
You could have said going to the mountain, the house in the mountain by myself for 5 days.
Yeah.
That sounded audacious to me, but
Yeah.
congratulations
Thank you.
on having a year of audacity.
Thank you.
And what
that.
about you?
So, well, my word for this year
yep.
is bloom.
Okay.
And Bloom is the title of my new book
Aw,
that is being published in about 4 weeks.
congratulations.
Thank you. And this is significant because the impetus to write the book started at the conference a year ago. When we kicked off Thrive and Be Well, we had to make a commitment in our group to what we were going to do. And I wrote down, I will write my book. And I did it.
Wow.
Thanks to you and Thrive and Wocip.
What was it? What was it about? First of all, let me just say, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. What was it about Be Well and Thrive and Wocip that helped birth and
To get it out of me?
something as large as that?
First of all, it's part of my mission to make sure that any person who connects with me leaves feeling better and whole about themselves. And I've been doing that in my practice as a coach. I've been doing it in my personal life. But I can't reach everyone. And I wanted to find a way to expand. And I knew I had a book in me. I just couldn't get focused. But in that space of feeling safe within my group, within the women of Wocip who I've connected with over the years, time and time again, and sharing of stories and experiences, I felt safe in revealing and being vulnerable. And I was able to write it.
That's
and I
great.
wrote it in less than a year.
Wow.
So I can only imagine you were having the conversation in your group with the women and you put it out there.
I put it out there.
And you were like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Once you say it,
I got to make this happen because I said
me. You know me, because if I put it out there, I'm going to do it. So I did it. I said, take the leap. Prior to Bloom being my word this year, for the past 3 years, my word's been unstoppable. And from the song by Sia, I'm unstoppable. I'm a Porsche with no brakes. And I felt that way because I got through COVID, finding out I had leukemia, every health challenge you could imagine, challenges with my family and their health, and everything. It was like rock'em sock'em robots. You know, you hit one, or whack-a-mole, a game kids used to play, and you knock it down, and I just kept coming back. And so I felt unstoppable. And the energy that I have from that, I share with other people because there's a reason that God saves me, that God supports me, and I know that this is part of my purpose. So I'm living in my purpose, and that gives me a sense of calmness, completion. Probably the year when I was 48, I got divorced. I wasn't planning on that, you know, when I first married him.
I'm sure.
I have a husband. And that year, I said to myself, I will challenge myself to do something every year that I've never done before. And I have held true to that. So that's why it was time to put it out there that I would write the book. But over the years, again, it goes back to trying something, and once you succeed at it, you keep saying, I can build on that. And that's where you can really increase your self-confidence. And so I share some of the strategies and tools that I use and have shared with others in my book, but I do that when I come to the Wocip conference, and it fills me so full.
Well, and the title of the book is Bloom, so that's why your word.
Yes.
Okay. So my word this year is limitless. At least I think it is. It's what is coming to the forefront over the last few days. So we will see if it remains, but I do think that limitless is what's resonating with me right now. So that's my one word. As I've listened to both of you talk, I'm thinking about the relationship that we have, but also the relationship that you all have with others within the Wocip community, and even the relationships that you all have. I know both of you, and you have some meaningful relationships. And Cecilia, you just mentioned a lot of some of the challenges that you've had and how being in community has been critical for you overcoming those challenges. And maybe Dr. Reese, you can take this this question is really the importance of being in community, particularly for professional women. Maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. You've probably heard me say this before, but we heal in community, we thrive in community. You know, if we think about the difference between surviving and thriving, surviving means to exist, just going through the motions day to day. And I believe that that can often be our motto, like, I just need to get this done. I don't have time to wait for other people. You know, the back of our mind that says nobody does it as well as I do, that hyper independence. But that's also what leads us to burnout. That's what leads us to exhaustion. That's what leads us to overwhelm. That's what leads us to anxiety. And that's what leads us to loneliness. And the antidote to all of that is being in healthy, safe community. You know, you mentioned like the safety that you found in your group with the women that were around you gave the courage to put this out there and say, this is what I want to do. And I think we can have bad experiences with people, and as a result of that, we can tell ourselves, I don't need anyone. But we were designed for connection. We were designed to belong. There is nothing better. I remember for me, a personal experience that I had when I first came to the Wocip conference. For me, first of all, that was the first time I was ever in a room with that many women of color at one time. And I remember, you know, getting back to my room after the first day and calling a friend and saying, my entire life is about to change. Not because of anything specific that was necessarily happening, but I was like, I finally feel like I belong. I finally feel like I'm in a space where I can be my complete self and no one's going to be threatened by it. No one's going to look down upon it. So I think if we ever get ourselves to a place where we think we don't need community, it's because we've been around the wrong kind of community. And when you are around the right people, it propels you, it ignites you, it makes you want to do things that you would have never considered before.
Like write a book.
Like write a book. yes,
Bloom.
like
Yes,
bloom.
bloom.
Yeah, it makes you better. It makes you grow. So I always tell people you need community. And if the word community feels like too much, then think about, collaboration. Who are people that complement who you are and what you like to do. But you need people in your life that just see you as yourself, but also inspire you to propel and to move forward in every way.
And I feel like there is something culturally that teaches us that independence is what we should strive for. It works against us in corporate America. And I will tell you, a lot of that came for me from my mother, who was a single mom, raising a daughter that she had this vision for, really grooming me for what I have stepped into, and saying that I can do anything and I can do it by myself. But I do remember saying to myself when I looked at her that I saw her bringing in other people to help her get the work done. So even though she was speaking this...
But she had people she trusted.
Exactly. So say a little bit more about that.
That's so powerful. I can visualize what you just said. I can see that image. Your mom was out there. She's busting her tail. And I was a single parent for a while. You find that community because you have to. It's born out of necessity. But you make sure that this is people you trust, right? And so she did that. But I also want to bring up the generational differences and how your mom might have viewed what success would look like for you versus what it looks like today. And she was teaching you to be independent because if you recall, and I know my dad did this, you get your education, don't bring no babies home.
Right. And you don't need a man.
Don't need a man. Those were the you can do this by yourself. Now, okay, Dad, you could have softened it a little bit. But those were the key messages. You can do this. So growing from that, you were ready. You were primed to just keep moving forward and accomplishing the things that you did. We don't have enough of those messages being disseminated into our communities today to our young women. So they're coming up not sure who to listen to, not sure who to trust, and not really having all of the skills to build formative relationships. Relationships are foundational to how do you interact in your own family. We have multi-generational households. You're being raised sometimes by your grandmother or other people and not sure how to relate. Then you go to school and you're coming in multicultural levels, don't have all the tools to do that. And now all of a sudden you're out and you're in the work environment, in a corporate environment, which wasn't designed for us in the first place. So how do you navigate that? And I think the first place is by looking inward. You got to look and have a relationship with yourself and understand that before you can communicate and work with people externally.
Well, I went and got me a relationship and a partner for life.
Yes, you
okay,
did.
let me just say, because I looked at her and I was like, oh no, there has to be a different way.
Yes.
There has to be a different way.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Yes, go ahead.
This may be deeper than you ever want to take it, but if you also think about historically in most cultures of color, division was intentional. So we were pulled apart and taught it is not possible for you to stay embedded in community and rely on anyone because we're picking you up and one of you is going to go here and one of you is going to go there. So that also became this, I don't know that the people around me are even going to stay. I was also raised by a single parent. I went to a different school every year up until high school. So I can adapt and change and move into any environment. But what I realized over time is I didn't allow people to be long-term sustainable friends because in my mind, I don't even know how long you're going to
They're
be in my
expendable.
life. They're expendable because I'll only be here for a little bit. So it takes that self-awareness piece, but it can be culturally, it's very historical. And if we've had experiences where we've felt like even within our families, there haven't been anyone there that we could actually trust, it makes it really hard to want to be in community if you've not had the experience of good community.
Well, that's what racism
That's
has
deep.
done. That's
Correct.
where
Yeah.
where that trauma
Yeah.
comes from.
Yeah.
Our families were never allowed to
Right.
be families.
Right.
So now we're trying to turn that tide by focusing on women because we know that where we go, the community will go.
And that shows up corporately. It
Yes.
shows up when we walk into a room and whether or not we feel comfortable having conversations or whether or not we network or whether we build relationships. Those are the things that kind of play underneath that subconsciously guide the way we show up and the way sometimes our career shapes out.
And that's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because trust. Now we're working for most of the time white men or women, and how do you form a relationship with managers that you feel very different? Even if they're doing their best at including you, what is it that you have to give and do in order to make those relationships work?
And we really do know, particularly in corporate America, that it's very difficult to do anything by yourself. And most of the time, you're executing on someone else's objective. It's the corporation's objective. So how do you overcome some of the issues that you talked about that are, ingrained in us from even a historical standpoint? How do you begin to overcome that so that you can have a different outcome in your work life, let alone your personal life?
I think first recognizing it's a process. There's not going to be this, do these 4 steps, and then all of a sudden that's going to go away and you're going to be able to make relationships. It takes a lot of self-awareness. It is, how do I feel when I walk in the room? Do I still quiet my voice or do I notice, like, I don't do that everywhere, but there's something about when I get around this person or in this situation that I become small again. So noticing those subtleties within ourselves. Is there prior messaging that's playing in our mind? So depending upon how you've grown up or whatever experiences you have, do you have you can't trust white people? You can't trust X, Y, and Z.
Get out of my head. How did you know?
I mean, just hypothetically speaking, you know what I mean? So you have to really go, like, where are messages also still playing in my head that because I've ascribed to them, it is keeping me from trying, from opening the door. But I think you first have to see where your own blocks and barriers are, which is uncomfortable. But it is the most powerful and necessary work that you can do because at the end of the day, other people aren't what's holding us back. We are what's holding us back because we either are choosing not to do the work and it's everybody else's fault, or we're recognizing if I want something to be different, I'm going to have to be a change agent. We have to be the greatest change agent in our own lives.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts?
Vision. Having a vision for who we can be. Being relatable. I love what you said about, intentionality. We can't function at a higher level until we address this foundation. So it's important to have the relationships and to know that we aren't working alone. No one goes it alone. But to have the best type of situation that you can create for yourself, you really have to have a vision for who you are, where you want to fit, and the ability to be agile and adapted as you get more information, as you have more experience and acquire new people in your life. So, but that vision is core.
Yeah. And, what we're hitting on here, relationships, is really important. And as you mentioned, it's not a one and done. It takes understanding, self-awareness, it takes tools. And with this in mind, we have thought about our Thrive series for 2025, understanding that relationships are absolutely critical. And so we've put together this 4-part series that will be a virtual series, and both of you will be the faculty for the series. So I'm super excited about Thrive. Now, for our audience, they might be wondering, well, what's Thrive, and what is it all about? And of course, we wanted them to get to know each of you. But when we think about what we've put together in Thrive, what would you, if I said just off the top of your head, explain to somebody, why they should show up? Because we're really trying to, people are so busy, and we're trying to say, why should you come and be a part of this Thrive series? Block some time and make sure that you can be a part. What would you say Thrive is? And I'm happy to ask Cecilia if you want to punt to her first.
I'm okay.
Okay, all right.
I'll take whatever you throw at me. What comes to mind for me is imagine that you're in a place that you're feeling unstuck, complacent, unseen, undervalued, whatever those words are for you. Imagine, this reminds me of a story that you just told us, that there's part of you that feels like you're not excited about waking up and starting your day. Right off the bat, if that's you in any capacity, then you're in survival mode versus Thrive. So coming to Thrive to me is about honoring the space you were designed to occupy, allowing yourself to walk into, I want to wake up, and the vision that I have set for myself, I'm not only willing to do the work to get there, and I'm going to be given the tools to get there, but I also have the opportunity to really cultivate the I deserve to step into the vision that I'm setting for myself.
Audacious.
I
What?
deserve.
And what would you say? I deserve.
I deserve my seat at the table.
Because if you don't believe you deserve the vision, the vision will just stay a fantasy.
Right. It should
How about that?
I love that. I am worthy.
Yes.
That's self-affirmation.
Yes.
I deserve this. So if you deserve it, you're going to put the time into
Correct.
it. I love that. And to me, Thrive, so had a chance to do Thrive last year, learned so much just listening to some of the challenges that our women are facing. But what stood out for me the most was still feeling insecure in their workspace. Not feeling included, getting messages that they're not good enough, triggering, those types of triggers that, make them hold themselves back from really exuding. And so Thrive to me is, if you've got a vision, doesn't matter what it is, when you wake up and you look in the mirror, are you happy with what you've done and who you see?
Yeah, and of course we know, and there's data that when people leave companies, they don't leave bad companies, they leave bad managers. And so the relationship between the individual and their manager is a critical one. So can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are about that relationship?
Absolutely. Again, I have evolved this, I think, thought around the importance of manager relationships, having coached many women over the past 10 years of my practice. What I see is a reticence that we have to engage full throttle. There, for various reasons, could be triggers, maybe lack of trust, all of those things, but we are holding back, putting ourselves into committing to making those relationships work. So let's take it out of the corporate environment for a minute and just think about your personal life. Remember when you start dating, your significant other, and you were like, I'm going to get this person? And you set a goal. And you set
Strategy.
They don't call me the strategy chick for no reason. But you had a goal, and you would, whether it was I'm going out and get sexy today, I'm going to put this outfit on, I'm going to buy this new black mini, put on my card, as she's saying. Yes, you would do all those things, and you had a strategy. You have to do the same thing. You have to find out what your manager needs or wants from you, and you have to engage.
Right.
You can't avoid it. So if you take control over that, then you can determine how much of myself do I want to reveal? What stories are appropriate for my manager to get to know me. You must put some of yourself out there in order to get something back.
And we're going to dive into that. Yes. I also, Charryse, want you to talk a little bit about what is it that the individual has to own, and in order to own it and show up in that relationship as whole. And you've mentioned some of the historical challenges that people bring to the table that might be barriers. But what are your thoughts in terms of the power that the individual has to step into the relationship?
I want to compliment off of what Cecilia just said, and my thought is we also have to recognize our unhealed parts. So, people don't leave bad companies, they leave bad managers. But if that part of you is still ruptured and unhealed, you take those same things into the next situation. Yep. So then you hold someone responsible for a pain that they didn't cause because you're still hurting. So I think the mental preparation in those relationships is, let me self-evaluate. Where have I had some past experiences that have created some major places that I need to repair before I can holistically step into this, because this person took my confidence or this situation tore me down. I didn't do the work to repair it. One of the things that you have to keep in mind is moving into a new place doesn't heal the situation. You think about relationships and marriages, they will often tell you that every marriage after the first one is less successful or has less likely to be successful, because most people don't take the time to go, what happened here before I go in and kind of repeat the same dynamic. And then from there, it just, again, goes back to believing in yourself and realizing that we become what we believe. So we have to step into the part of ourselves that says, I appreciate validation from other people. I appreciate when I feel seen, but even if I don't, how can I give that to myself? How do I have a growth mindset? How can I be teachable and put myself in the position to learn? How can I look at my own mirror and reflect on the parts of me that needs to heal, or the parts of me that are still very defensive when it comes into creating those relationships? But all of that is very possible work to do, but we have to be willing to look at ourselves.
Wow. That is so powerful. It just reminds me, and we talked about this the other day, of after seeing the movie Wicked. And, Alphaba was right there in the vortex, and she could not fly. The winds were whipping her everywhere. And right at that moment, she could see her younger self. And she had to look at her younger self before she could grab that broom and fly. So we all have the ability to fly, but we are, and sometimes I say bloom. The title Bloom came from me telling my daughters as I raised them, flowers bloom in their own time, but they all do. So you don't have to compare your garden to someone else's. It will come, but it won't come until you plant those seeds to look at yourself and grasp who you are, and then the world's your oyster.
Well, for those who are listening, I'm just excited about this Thrive series, and I can't wait to participate in it with you both. And I'm going to also be there writing and also interjecting. But just to let people know, as I mentioned, it's a 4-part series. The first session, we're going to talk about starting fresh, setting a vision for thriving work relationships. So having that vision is going to be critical. In the second session, we're going to talk about trust and thrive, strengthening your work relationships. So there we go. And the third session, it's your choice. Overcoming work relationship hurdles. So that's important. And then the last session is how do you partner for success to create win-win work relationships? Not just the manager relationship, but there are other work relationships that you need to have as well. And so we're going to get into all of that throughout 2025.
Absolutely.
As we end our discussion, maybe just for each of you to talk about what's the one thing that people can look forward to get prepared as they show up for the Thrive session. So how should people be preparing themselves other than blocking their calendar, reading their emails so that they can get the dates, and then blocking their calendar. What else can they do to prepare for the Thrive series?
I'll start because I like to be creative about these things. That's the artist in me, different type of artistry. And then Dr. Reese, I know you've got some really detailed things that they can do too. But following along the lines of getting to know yourself, I would say one of the exercises you can start doing to prepare is take 10 of your closest people, it could be some work relationships, some at home, and ask them for 3 adjectives they would use to describe you. Write them down, collect them, and then put them together. Create some sentences. See how those adjectives resonate for you. And then, do you agree with them? Why or why not? Is there a different way you would like people to see you and describe you? Write that down. Those will all be helpful as we go into creating a vision for who you are and what you want to be.
I love that. All right.
Of course, I have a million things in my head. I will not say all of them. To me, one of the things that you want to do is to really ask yourself, is my life in alignment with who I want to be and how I'm showing up, right? Because if it's not, then really looking at Thrive as your opportunity to make a shift, to remind yourself that even if you feel like things are good, better is always possible. So I want to acknowledge, Thrive isn't just for people who feel like things are not well. This is also for those who feel like things are great, but I want to continue to bloom. I want to continue to evolve. I want to continue to make sure that I am in the right conditions. And then I would say from there, taking some time to identify, along with your vision for yourself this year and what you want to experience, what do you value? And how are those values showing up in the way that you are moving through and experiencing your professional life and your personal life? Because even though we like to separate them, the two go hand in hand. Yes. They are interconnected and reflect each other.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you for sitting down and talking with me. And I look forward to seeing you in our Thrive series. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, stay in the know. This podcast is brought to you by Wocip, empowering women of color in biopharma and life sciences to lead, innovate, and change the world. If you are interested in appearing as a guest on this podcast, contact us at info@wocip.org.